First last night, in fact in the dead of night, a young bright girl killed herself. The 25-year-old actor Jiah Khan had debuted in a high-profile film and acted with some top stars as well. Her friend who last spoke to her was questioned today as the film industry tried to come to terms with the loss of another young promising personality, one who could have been caught in the throes of depression.
A late-night shocker. 25-year-old Jiah Khan, seen in films like Nishabd and Gajni, found hanging in her home by her mother. As the loss of another young actor sunk in, Bollywood shared its shock and grief. Amitabh Bachchan, whose film Nishabd Jiah debuted in, said, "What? Jiah Khan, what has happened? Is this correct? Unbelievable." A sentiment echoed by many others, including Shahid Kapoor, who tweeted, and we quote, "Shocked and saddened to hear about Jiah Khan. Very disturbing. R.I.P. May her soul rest in peace." Sonam Kapoor tweeted, "R.I.P. Jiah Khan. Terrible tragedy. Very shocking and disturbing news." And crucially, a sign perhaps of depression, of a young girl struggling to keep up with the glamour world, fighting to accept failure while enjoying success. Ram Gopal Verma, who worked with Jiah in her debut film Nishabd, tweeted, "The last time I met her, Jiah told me that everyone around her makes her feel like a failure. In spite of being highly appreciated in Nishabd and being a part of hugely successful Gajni and Houseful, she had no work for the last 3 years." But what was the final trigger? Looking for answers, the police questioned Suraj Pancholi, son of actor Aditya Pancholi, and who had the last conversation with Jiah shortly before her death.
इसमें कोई शक नहीं है कि उनका एक प्रेम संबंध था और उनके आपसी रिश्तों में क्या तनाव था वो तो वो जानते हैं, मगर इस वक्त किसी एक व्यक्ति को डिमोनाइज करना और कहना कि उनके कारण ये हुआ है, ये इस क्रॉस को ट्रिवियलाइज करता है। जैसे मैंने कहा कि एक कैटलिस्ट हो सकता है, एक ट्रिगर हो सकता है, एक इमोशनल ट्रिगर हो सकता है, मगर कहीं पर इस बच्ची के अंदर एक ऐसे कुछ लक्षण थे कि वो डिप्रेशन के जो एक भवन में आहिस्ता फंस गया।
A career stalled combined with a reported breakup with Suraj Pancholi 2 months ago perhaps became too much for the young actress to take.
Jiah Khan alias नफीसा खान, जो कि हमारी उनकी माँ से बात हुई, प्राइमा फेसी वो एक डिप्रेशन के स्टेज में थी।
Sadly, it's a tragedy not new to the film world, as others like Viveka Babaji and Nafisa Joseph show. And now Jiah, the latest young girl to succumb to the high pressures of the glitz and glamour world. Another example of the dark truths that lurk behind some of these bright stars. With Vikram Thapa in Mumbai, Beverly White for NDTV.
Well, joining us now on the program, Simar the girl, she's a model, also Sudhir Mishra, filmmaker with us, and my colleague Vikram Thapa, who's been, of course, tracking this story. Thanks all so much for joining us. Simar, first to you, as someone who's sort of familiar with the so-called glamorous business, the glamour business, really, as it were. This is a young, bright girl, really unnecessary, and what a tragic loss. There's very little really to say on that. But are we as a society not taking depression seriously? Because after her death it emerges that she talked about being a failure, about being perceived as someone who wasn't a success.
Yes, clearly I think there is a trend here. I see it because I did know Viveka Babaji very closely. She was a friend of mine. I also knew Nafisa Joseph. We had modeled, we had done a number of assignments and a number of tours together. And the last thing you would say about these two girls was that they would be prone to depression, or they were extremely confident, they were go-getters, they were leaders in their field at a very young age. I see the same parallel in Jiah Khan, that they tasted success at a very young age. They were very brave in the choices that they made. And this seemed to be a second innings that they didn't seem to be able to take grip of. And I think that it must be depression, it must be something that we have to be made more aware of, clearly.
Right.
This should not be happening as often as it has.
Right, that's of course tragedy. It happens over and over again. It makes headlines, unfortunate headlines over and over again. But are we really learning any lessons? Sudhir Mishra, to you, you know, we see this young, bright actors, actresses, all desperate to make a name for themselves, sort of enamored really in a sense by the glitz and glamour of industries like say the film industry, maybe even modeling, you know, and all of that. But time and time again we see that their life falls into the same pattern, unable to cope with failure just the same way as they enjoy their successes.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, you can't draw a correlation directly. There's no, this leads to that directly. There's individuals, and different individuals react to stress differently.
Fair enough.
You know, I mean, the industry may be, you know, a place of glitz and glamour, and you know, and maybe when you're, you know, failing, then, you know, you're bereft of friends or work. You know, there's a loneliness that grips you. But the industry is equally welcoming of comebacks.
Right.
I mean, it's just a Friday that makes it all come back again. So I mean, you know, it's all sorts of things, you know. I mean, and it's not merely of this, you know, there's a loneliness in a big city.
Right.
You know, I mean, and suicides happen. You know, mostly when suicide happens, you know, the person concerned has talked to a few people. You can see signs. It may be that that night she was, you know, just in the grip of an emotion, and there was nobody to hold her hand.
Right.
You know, I mean, it could be one of so many reasons. So I mean, all you can do is mourn a tragedy, and you wish it had not happened, and that she is stuck by
the idea of course not being
and that it would have turned around. You know, it would have turned around.
Fair enough. The idea, of course, not being to sort of single out any industry, but you know, perhaps it's easier in say a so-called glamorous industry to sort of hide behind a facade, really, or sort of not let people around you come to know of what you're undergoing. But do you believe that this is something that the industry sort of needs to keep in mind, because increasingly this is also a very young industry, lots of youngsters out there wanting to make a name for themselves? And again, I don't mean just film. I don't mean just film.
You should not believe that the Photoshop. And I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a perception. See, what happens in films is there's a larger life portrait of yourself that you see. You don't have to believe that the Photoshopped image is you, you know. And if you trust more in your talent, then it does turn around. And it would have, you know, this is a tragedy, but, you know, she had done good work. Why this girl did what she did is perhaps one will never know now. You know, yeah, I mean, it's a tough world at times, and you have to understand that, you know, what keeps you going is, what I would always tell young people all the time is that if you come into this place, you have to be able to face rejection.
Right.
You know, that's the first lesson, because anybody can reject your work, anybody can criticize you, you know, your films can fail, you can be alone. There are many compulsions that make people not work with you.
Right.
You know, there are many compulsions of film directors, film producers, you know. So, I mean, you have to understand things from a larger perspective and keep going, and one day it turns around. You know, just trust your talent, you know, and it works.
Right.
You know, but, you know, what happened to Jiah may have nothing to do with the film industry. It may be a young woman
Fair enough.
depressed because of an individual circumstance.
Fair enough. That, of course, is very possible also. Simran, you know, you mentioned Nafisa Joseph, you also mentioned Viveka Babaji, unfortunate parallels, of course, being drawn. So, making the point, it could have happened to anyone, anywhere, which is, of course, also perhaps very, very valid. It could really be anyone's story.
No, I don't think so. You know, here when I heard about this, about this morning, I feel in hindsight it's easier to say that it'll turn around, it'll come around, but I see a very strong trend here, which I think we need to get up, and we need to set up at least families of girls who are out there trying to be reaching where they want to reach, who are aspirational in nature. I think their families and their friends need to sit up, and I think we need to notice there is a very strong trend. None of these girls, I told you, they did not appear fragile to me or to anybody else. The facade is rather strong. They come across extremely confident. They seem to know what they're doing, and suddenly you wake up and you hear that they are not there anymore.
Right.
So it's a young life, it's a talented life, and worse than a young life going is one that is gone by its own hand. So when you sit up, it gives me chills to really think that, you know, there was Viveka who was effusive and young and vibrant, and suddenly she was not there anymore. And I think that we need to take notice that even these girls who are out there, they are fragile at the end of the day. And that while they look secure and they look like they're in control, that they're clearly not. And I think I can understand, because it is a very fracturing to your self-esteem when you've actually been there, you've touched the stars, and suddenly you're not even needed, you're not noticed, and yes, clearly people you believe less talented than you are reaching up ahead for whatever reason. And Bollywood doesn't tell you why somebody and you know, when you have those lows at a very young age, like 25, and you feel, oh my God, is it over? I touched it, and is it over? It can be extremely, extremely difficult to take care of, and I think we need to notice. I think parents and friends, in hindsight, it's so much easier to say, I wish one had reached out, I wish I was there, and I guess that's
see the signs, like you're saying, see the signs, and not just, of course, in
see the signs, you know, and I got up today, and I have to say, I was so upset to see that this keeps happening every couple of years, and this seems to become a trend. It wasn't a trend, it's clearly become a trend.
Right, another young, live. Vikram, you've of course been at the story all day. We've sort of seen disbelief, you know, from those who knew her, to just basic shock coming out, you know, from all those tweets that we've been looking at through the day, from those who worked with her, knew her, and sort of, even if she hadn't sort of, you know, hit new professional highs, the fact was that she was someone who had done reasonably well for herself at one point, and perhaps, like we are here seeing so many tweets of people saying that she could have had another innings somewhere else.
Well, Natasha, I'll just take what Sudhir said. I mean, I'll just take Sudhir's point a little further. I mean, he said a Friday changes it all. Unfortunately for Jiah Khan, that Friday had not come for the last 3 years. I mean, if you look at the track record of Jiah Khan, I mean, she did 3 massive films. Like, she did a film, like she debuted with a film like Nishab. Not everybody can do a film like Nishab with an actor like Amitabh Bachchan, based on a you know, on a controversial subject like Lolita. Even the Western world doesn't look at that, you know. I mean, it may be critically acclaimed and all of that, but when you look at a film like Lolita or the book like Lolita, I mean, it is controversial to do a film like that and to be appreciated by the critics, and then to do a film like, so that is one, like, you would call it parallel cinema. It's not something that would make money, and it did make money. So, and then she did a film like Ghajini. It was a bit part. She wasn't the main lead in the film, but she did but she was an important part of the film. That film made more than 100 crores. Then comes Houseful. You know, it was like a comic caper, and it was fun, and you know, all of that. There was Deepika Padukone, there was Arjun Rampal, there was Akshay Kumar, you know, all the good looking people in the industry, and she was surrounded by all those people. But what was not happening was that for the last 3 years, she was not working, and it can be really, really difficult for a starlet to walk the red carpet and then not have any answers to give, because we are at the red carpet all the time, and we'll say, okay, so what is the next film? And then the only answer that you generally give is, oh, I'm working on certain projects, I don't want to talk about them. In this case, there were no projects to talk about, and that is the reason we didn't see any.
That's of course perhaps very, very tragic, because perhaps there weren't those projects at the moment. Right, Vikram, I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but perhaps those projects just weren't there when she was asked the question, but who knows, the story could have turned around. The point, of course, it's both the and is making the story could have turned around. You just have to be in it for the long haul. Sudhir Mishra, taking your point, this could be anybody's story anywhere, and I take the point, because of course not just limited to film world, could be anybody's story, but what do you believe are the lessons, if any, that all of us can really learn?
You just have to stick it out. You have to work with and trust your friends. You have to have a set of backups in your life. You don't cut off. I mean, the essential thing when you come to this place is that you don't cut off from where you came from. You know, that you still have people to lean on, that you have friends who are good critics, who can hold your hand but also tell you the truth about certain things. You have to believe that, you know, that it's not just the world that's against you, but that somewhere you need to reach out, and often when you do that, I mean, you may call this and I'm supposed to be a critic of the film industry, but you know, I mean, actually in this place there is a certain warmth, and if you have to, you know, hone your talent and trust it, you know, and not just be involved in the glamour of it all, because that fades, you know. So at the end of it, what is it? What is it? It's your skill. So if you trust your skill and hone your skill, you'll get somewhere, and the belief in that rather than the peripherals of what you get, the red carpet, the page threes, the parties. if you sort of take away that and then concentrate on what is. But in the case of Jiah, you know, I mean, all you can do is, I mean, it's very easy to talk in hindsight, you know.
Absolutely,
who knows what that poor girl was.
Right.
So, I mean,
right.
To also pass a judgment, to pass a judgment
which
on
is not
her
our
is
attempt
also
at all.
unfair, you
right.
know? I mean, she did what she did, and all you
right.
can, all you can do is mourn. You know, I mean, it's a
right.
tragic event, and one should not judge her.
Absolutely, there's been no attempt here to do any of that,
you know,
right?
And one should not judge her at all.
Right,
you know?
absolutely, we're totally with you on that. And no attempt to do any of that here. All we're trying to do is sort of mourn, like you're saying, the loss of a young life. Just 25-year-old, promising, bright, intelligent young. Who could have, of course, gone places and been successful, if not here, then elsewhere. Like you're saying, self-belief, making the point, be in it for the long haul. This isn't the end of it. But thanks very much. I'm completely out of time, but thanks all so much for taking our time to join us on the program this evening.